Sunday evening. You're listening to the smooth sounds of WTV Internet Radio with DJ Marky. No, I'm joking. Alrighty. Hope everyone's having a good Sunday. Once again, shouldn't be on here very long. Um, shouldn't be on here very long. Make sure my phone is down. So but anyhow, welcome Ashir Emily Sky. Welcome. And as everyone tunes in, just talking whatever anyone wants to talk about, just Sunday evening gear or recording or the music industry. But as more people tuned in, I'm gonna throw out a little I guess plug. So for those that remember, I was working with an artist. Her name was Wanda, and we finally released some stuff and distributed. So now you can actually go on to um, YouTube or Spotify or Pandora or whatever you listen to. All you got to do is type in like Wanda, common spelling, then the letter J, and then of course the song out there is "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," and that was one of the tracks we did up here in my studio. So it's on YouTube and so forth. But anyhow, welcome Stewie 55. And as more and more people tune in, just talking whatever we want to talk about for Sunday. Christmas is coming up, and hopefully people are getting what they want for Christmas. For me, it's always Christmas year round. Pardon me if I got to sneeze because I was dusting, so I got to sneeze. Ooh, excuse me. Thank you. So no, it's not so much an album as it is just a few single releases because in modern times, most people just don't buy albums anymore, like CD albums or whatever. No one buys them anymore. Everyone buys singles or listen to singles. So released about 5 singles. That's about it. So but you can check it out. Um if I remember, I'll probably put a link in this live stream video that you can click on. But like I said, if you listen to iHeartRadio or Spotify or Pandora or you got Amazon Music or whatever case, it's on all that. So, and the first one that came out was "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," and so you get a chance to listen to it. So, but like I said, I'm just going to talk studio gear, and whatever everyone wants. If they got any questions, or I might have some questions. But what I can say, one of the two things I do want to talk about is EQ and compressor. Like I was talking last week, I didn't get a chance to go into a whole lot of details about it. I'm gonna try to go into a little bit more details. Um, if I'm sniffing or doing all that, because I got allergies, so I apologize if you hear me, all that. But so I think I think EQ and compressors are probably the two hardest things to get right because those are the two things that actually make your stuff sound, like they're supposed to when you're doing recording and mixing and all that. So, uh, so basically, um, that's the hardest. It's easy to record, some vocals, get a microphone and preamp and record vocals, but to make the vocals sound right, the EQing and how the microphone and the preamp is crucial. So, hey, welcome, Maddie Two Hats Music. So, those are the things I wanted to talk about, especially EQ, because I gotta remember what I did with my paper. I use it as a guide. I gotta remember where I put it. This paper, I gotta remember where I put it. It might be downstairs. But anyhow, there's a paper. It tells you, I use it as a guide for how to EQ vocals, how to EQ instruments, drums, and so forth, because it is a lifesaver to me to make, it's a lifesaver for me. And it's one of those things that is hard to get just right, you know. So let's see. Ashir saying we can hear the quality of your studio, but hear what with that big board and rack sound. Yes, if you listen to, and I like I say, I would say, um, like on that track, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, everything was done through this console. And I might do a video of the outboard gear that I used. Like for example, these set of EQs here, I used those are the Rains. I used that on vocals, and I used a pair of the KT2As for vocals. Then the bottom ones are Lin 2As. Those were for bass. Then I was using some of the other outboard gear, some of the more compressed like that for some of the background vocals and so forth. And of course, I was using a lot of the reverb processors in that rack over there. So, yeah, I was using a lot of outboard gear. So, if you want to listen to that track, and like I said, I would say I am not the best mixer. So I would not claim to be the best mixer or whatever the case. You got guys that do this like every day, like Chris Loralgi or Andrew Sheps, or mixer, engineers like that. I don't get a chance to do it enough because I don't have like a ton of clients. Um, so anyhow, let me see. Stu just said when someone says they use hardware gear for tracking only in the day, what do they mean? Are they saying they use hardware equipment for stereo? No, a lot of times for tracking mean for recording, right? In their DAW. So a lot of times what they're going to do is they're going to use most of the time on the tracking portion or the recording, or what we call the front end. They're going to choose some pieces of gear that they're going to use to record into their DAW. For example, they might use a preamp, and then going to go through a compressor. Then that's going to go into the DAW, into whatever DAW they're using. That's what they're doing. And there's so much variety of choices out there. Welcome, Joseph. So that's all that really is. And then some guys can choose to use hardware for mixing. So you got three parts of, let me say there's technically three parts. You got your front end, which is the tracking or recording. Then you got your mixing. Once you've done recording all your tracks, time to mix it. And then last is the time to get it mastered. And then after you get it mastered, then it's ready to be distributed. So that's the final master. So that's and your two stereo master is what they call the master recording. That's the part that you hear that's released, that the public hears. So Almaty says Christmas track sounds really nice, but I just listened. Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. That's the, like I said, that's what I was doing for the last 2 weeks, just trying to get a few of these songs mixed and get them, out there. So Joe says, you still got the Behringer Eurodisc? Yes, and it's still kicking. Do I still have my Behringer Eurodisc mix? MX 8000? It sure is downstairs, and I'm on that board every day because I'm usually downstairs for the most part. I made improvements to that area too. Like I've added another preamp. I got the Heritage Audio 73, which is the Neve style preamp down there. I've changed. I got complete Mark of the Unicorn converters down there now. Some more, just a few more things. I'm using the Mackie HR8, but I'm going to switch eventually to the Kali. Like I got up here, I got the Kali IN8s up here. I'm gonna get some Kalis down there. They're three-way monitors. So, oh, he says Juana has a really nice voice. Oh, thanks. I'll let her know for sure. For sure. Uh, uh, yeah, she's a really good singer. So, oh, we're not showing new things on it. Yeah, I'm gonna do an update video tour. Like people know up here, I've changed my monitors again. I used to have the Behringer Truce and the JBL 305s up here, but now I got the Kali and I got the Adams, which I like a lot. I really like those Adam AH AAHs. Here's the thing when it comes to studio, because I've listened to a lot of studio monitors. I mean, ranging from M Audio to JBLs to Yamahas, you name it. And it is an ear adjustment when you start changing your monitors to get your ears used to how the new monitors or your monitors, so you got to get used to listening to how those sound. So, and I'm just, getting used to, because how you hear is how you're going to mix, right? So if the speakers aren't right, you're not going to mix right. That's just what it is. So, yeah, just wanted to talk about studio gear and stuff like that. So I made some changes up here. You can't see it. So like for example, y'all can't see it, but I got the Behringer. I decided to buy the Behringer 369 because Neve 33609s are expensive. So I got the Behringer. And I watch, videos that reviews on it, and it's actually as good as it sounds. Like I'm like, yeah, it actually is a really good bus compressor. It's my master bus compressor. So, yep. And then of course I've added a rack of Personas, so I can have gates, compressors, and expanders on each channel. So I got those. I got 8 of those Personas. You'll see in the tour. Anyhow. So a story saying, tell me some industry secrets when it comes to tracking. Believe it or not, I'm not gonna say there's any secrets. If you're like me, I don't know if you're like me, but I watch a lot of studio tours. Because the reason why I watch a lot of studios, because I've been in quite a few studios, but not to the extent of, like, I use Warren Hewitt. Warren Hewitt, I Produce Like a Pro, does a lot of studio tours. And the reason why I watch those, because a lot of times the engineers or the people in those studios will tell you exactly what they're doing. And I know that's hard to do in a house, especially if you just don't have the space. But there are things that I made videos where you can, one of the biggest key things is making sure your mixing console in your DAW is routed and set up like an actual analog console. And for some people, that's hard to do if they've never worked on an actual analog console. They're like, okay, what do you mean? Because, for example, an analog console is going to have, not only is going to just have the channels, it's going to have buses, and they're also going to have auxiliaries. And some of the things that you want to do is make sure that you, unlike a real console, and in your DAW, you just have to make it. You have to build it. That's the difference in most of these DAWs, like Studio One, Reaper, Logic, and so forth. And what they'll do is those DAWs are designed to build the channels, the tracks, as you make tracks. So if you do 4 tracks of sounds, it's only going to make 4 channels in the mixing console. It makes it as you build it. But what it usually, a lot of times, what these consoles do not do, or these DAWs do not do, is make buses and auxiliaries. You have to do that. Um, so a lot of times when people start getting all their plugins, they tend to put everything on inserts on their channels. And that is a lot of times the only thing that you really want to do on inserts on your channels is add reverbs and compressors and things like that. You really want to add your reverbs and your delays on auxiliaries like you would do on an actual console. That's what you want to do. Because if you don't, you won't get the same, this is how some of the secrets. Okay, let me back up on let me back up on it took me a while to understand this and what was making studios and their things sound big. And believe it or not, if you just do everything from the channels directly to your master bus, like on this board, the master bus is if you can see in the video, the two yellow faders that are pushed up, the two yellow faders. Hopefully, people aren't colorblind. The two yellow faders, because I got a set of red bus channels right there. Those are just bus or groups. Groups or buses. You're grouping or busing everything together. Busing or grouping, right? The two yellow is the master bus. That's the master output. So that's the master so when you're listening, everything's routed to those two masters. How you're listening, everything routes to those two masters. So if you are just doing everything and then everything's going from the channels to those masters, it won't sound as big. As you start using auxiliaries and buses. Like, for example, some of my other channels, my returns for my effects are going to other channels, just like they do on, if you ever watch mixing, for example, like watching Chris Lord Algae, he's worked on a large SSL console. Welcome Spawn, original Spawn. And what he's doing is, if you ever watch his mixes, when he's mixing, some of the channels that he's got on that SSL is dedicated for like reverbs and delays. He'll have them on channels. He has them over here on the left. I have them on the right. But it ain't, it doesn't really matter. If you have a console, that's how he does it. That's how a lot of, not just Chris Lord Algae, a lot of mixing engineers that use a console do that. So that's the concept of making it sound big, if that makes sense. So if you do that in your DAW, you get all your tracks, and then you set all your auxiliaries for your reverbs and delays on separate auxiliaries, and you're going to blend those reverbs. In other words, when you send on your auxiliary send to send to those reverb units, a lot of times I have it in pre versus post, because the difference between pre and post is, for example, if you have it on post, wherever the fader volume is on the volume is going to affect the auxiliary send volume as well. And it's hard to do that. If you're bringing down the volume of the fader, you're going to bring down the volume of your send. So I don't do that. I put it on pre. That way I can still send to my auxiliary and have that reverb unit parallel with the actual sound. That's what's going to make it sound bigger, because reverb, like for example, chambers or plates or concert halls, whatever, that's what's giving you that big space sound, because that's space is what makes stuff sound big. It's kind of like if you're in a closet, it sounds like you're in a closet versus you're in a big giant open room. If you're in a big open room, you can hear that you're in a big open room. That's the same concept in what you're trying to capture. It's like in your stereo image when you're sitting between your speaker, you're trying to hear this. You're trying to make people the psycho illusion that they're listening to something in a big room or whatever the case. So that's how you do that. So that's all I would say about us. There's really no secrets other than doing that in your DAW, and you'll be amazed, because a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know this when I started working with DAWs years ago. They design the DAWs to react like that, like you're working on a real console on purpose. And I learned that even in the old DAW software, like I got Cubase Sonar, Cubase XX, and Sonar Producer 7, all that. And I do the same thing in these old DAWs, and it still gets the same reaction that way. So Joseph said, yes, I'm still learning. Because I still learn on the Behringer. Okay, believe it or not, I have the Eurodesk, and I've did some videos on it, and it reacts like any other analog console. It's an inline console. It's got 48 channels, except 1 through 24 is shared, and you can split between. So a lot of times on that Behringer, what I have is all the channels. That's the one. If you have at your desk, all your inputs like your line or your mic and your inserts and your direct outs are on top. Then behind the board, so those are the other, and so 1 through 24 is on top, and then of course 25 through 48 on the back. How they did that was those first 424 was to actually, direct out to a tape machine, because this board was made in the 90s. This is when we're still using tape. So then the returns, once you were done recording, you were supposed to flip and flip the channels. So that way now you're going from so you can now mix on that board. So you would flip all the channels. And so it's kind of like your faders the second one would reverse. What's nice about that board also is because it has a mix B, so you can A/B mixes for different studio monitors. But it still has 8 buses and it still has 6 auxiliary sends, except 3 and 4 have to, you have to share between 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. So I got about 3 reverb units on those 3 auxiliary sends. I got a Yamaha Rev 7, Yamaha SPX 90, and a TC Electronics. So those are on my auxiliaries 1 through 4. So when I want to send channels out, so my Mark of the Unicorn, which is a 24 output, has 24 outputs coming from that interface into 24 inputs of the console. So that way when I'm in the DAW, when I route my channels out, they're going 1 through 24. So that way you can mix on the board and you can, do your inserts and all so forth. And you can route to buses, and then those buses can go to your master bus. And you can also bring your auxiliaries to those as well. And then that will then send to the master output. Then you can actually print back in for your 2-track master. So that's how I have that kind of set up. Really similar to like I got this set. This board, this console, this Allen Heath, is not an inline console. It's a 48 channel board. So I got it set up as a split console. So from the buses to the right of it is all where I record, and my other channels going to, because I'm only recording about 8 channels, 25 through 32 is mine. That's why I record into the DAW. But the returns from my interface come out of my interface. I have the Antelope Orion up here, 1 through 24 out of my Orions coming into 1 through 24 of the board. So I'm kind of old school when it comes to routing on boards, because back in the day when they used to have tape machines, most tape machines were 8, 16, or 24 track tape machines. So 24 tracks is pretty much about the most to me. Anything after that starts to sound cluttered to me anyway. So I don't really try. I try to keep all my tracks at a minimum, no more than 24 tracks. So how I usually do it is like my drums will be here, then I'll do like bass, keys, guitar, strings, and so forth, and then 17 to 24 will be just vocals. That's how I usually do it. Because for example, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas that I did, that's you can hear. It's no more than 24 tracks. That's about a half on there. It's 24 tracks on that entire song. So if that makes sense. So welcome, Ojella Picks. So welcome, Agolf Twitler, welcome, as everyone tunes in. So yeah, like I said, on the Your Desk, I have the Mark of the Unicorn. I have a 24 AI, which is his own, and of course the 24 AO. When the 24 AO and all that, they're slave to each other, and that's my interfaces that I got downstairs under that for the Your Desk. For this console upstairs, I have the Antelope Orion. It's the Gen 3, but it's the Antelope Orion Gen 3. Um, and I don't right now. I don't really need to upgrade to the Gen 4 because all they really done was really the converters are the same. All they really done was they did some change in the patch based system in the software um, with the Gen 4, and there's a few other changes, but not enough for me to upgrade. So my Antelope Orion is working perfectly fine, and if it fails, then I'll upgrade. But to the Antelope Orion Gen 4. But right now, it's working perfectly fine. So that's what I'm using for my interface downstairs. The marker, the Motu or marker the unicorn, 24 AI and a 25 AO downstairs for that with the Behringer. So says Ago says my Echoplex is a quarter-inch model, but that's a different type of tape. I got you. All right. So let's see what else I was talking about. Yes, I was talking EQ and compressors, which are hard to get right. Like I was listening. Excuse me. Like I said, I was telling people. Um, I was telling people about these videos that I watch, and they were. It was it Joseph? Were you asking? Welcome, David, and about some of the, or was it Stewie? Oh yeah, Stewie 55 was asking um about studio secrets and all that. So really going back to the tracking all that, like one of the things that almost all recording studios do, most of them, not everybody, most of them will go through a preamp um for their vocals. They'll get a condenser microphone and it's going to go through a preamp, something like like a Neve 1073 or something similar, maybe a clone. Then that's going to chain through like a compressor, maybe an LA or an LA2A style compressor, maybe 1176 style compressor, maybe even the Tube Tech C1LB or CLB1 or whatever. I forget the model number. That is pretty common. Then that's their vocal chain. Sometimes they'll parallel compress with maybe a 1176. Sometimes they might even use a distressor. Um, so it depends. That's one of the key things. Other than that, most of the microphones that you're going to use when you're recording drums, welcome Legacy Shredder. Um, most of the instruments and so forth that you're going to mic are usually going to go through some sort of mic preamp first. Some are channel strips, then that's going to go into your DAW before some people just have a studio setup where they just have, like, let's say 8 channels on a audio interface that has 8 mic pre's in it, and they'll record directly into the mic pre's into the DAW. A lot of people do that, but the warmth is coming from of those microphones capturing those instruments and vocals and all that. It's going through some sort of external preamp first, something like I don't know, you name your choice. Like I have Avalons, I have 73 that are Tone Beats, I got some Joe Meeks, I got some Universal Audio, all different flavors of preamps, but they're going through something like that. That's what they're usually doing. Other than that, it's just mic placement, how it's placed in front of the cabinet, mic choice, that how that's going through how it's placed on the instrument in front of the cabinet in the room, and the space of the room they're recording in, the acoustics of the room. That's really it. Really, most of the time everything's being routed through so you can hear through the console for monitoring. A lot of times, some people record directly to the DAW, but then you want to make sure your latency, because a lot of times when you have on to be able to listen to your source, you might hear a little bit of latency. So a lot of times you have to change your latency. Um, as long as the DAW is capturing the source, I don't want to listen back through the DAW to come back for me to listen because it will have a little bit of just off. My point is to make sure the DAW is capturing a good signal and recording that good signal. And as long as I see a good signal, because I'm monitoring through a console, so there's zero latency when you monitor your console, so I can hear what's going on. So I know whatever I hear what's going on, I know that's what the DAW is capturing. So that's how I do it. So is the SSL interface good? Yeah, SSL. Yeah, they're good. I mean, 90. I can't think of too many SSL products that are bad. I've made videos by SSL. I don't, people probably thought I was, when I make videos by SSL, I'm talking about the quality. I never talk about SSL quality. SSL is an industry standard company. The only things I used to have issue with SSL is their pricing, because they're using their name to justify charging higher rate prices. But when SSL finally made like a channel strip, when SSL made the channel strip for the first time, they made a product I think is actually fairly reasonably priced. It's a legit SSL channel strip that's really gives you the character of an SSL, like a 6,000 console, whatever, 4,000, whatever, in a channel strip that's actually affordable, because that's what the going rate for high-end channel strips like SSL, whatever, Neves or whatever, they're all in that, $2, $3, $4, $5,000 range. So I think that's fairly well more than fairly priced for the SSL channel strip that they came out. They get the 4,000 and they came out with a 9,000 channel strip. So I think that's more justifiable. If I was going to choose between, Lady Shredder said he asked me if I love the big, I love that price. Yeah, they that was real more than so. Anyhow, David said, "Are you going to do a studio tour of 2020?" I'm going to do a studio tour update. I'm not going to do a full. I don't know, because most of the stuff that people seen if you've seen any of my other studio tours, I don't really, nothing's changed. The only thing I've done was added gear. I hadn't really changed much other than just adding gears, buying a few more microphones, adding, whatever the case. That's all I'm going to do is an update tour. So I'm going to probably do an update tour. Everything's still generally the same. So, and I'll just do an update of some of the stuff that I've changed. Let's see, get the level speed for a big. Oh, yeah. Signal to noise ratio, yep, with analog, yep. Analog you just gotta be careful with analog, because it can be, you start getting noise when you dealing with gear. Some of the biggest noise problems could be just because you're amplifying certain things, that little bit of noise that you might not want, and it can be hard to get rid of. Or a lot of times when you start running so much gear, you gotta worry about ground loops. So you gotta run the ground system and so forth. And most studios, that's another thing. That's another secret, that large console, a lot of outboard gear is one of the things that's never talked about enough, I think, when it comes to these videos, when it comes to that. When I watch these videos, I don't never see enough of how recording studios are actually built and set up, including grounding and wiring. And it's kind of like some of the studios I've been in, like if I've been in some of the studios I've been in, you see the outboard gear, you see the patch bay, you see all the outboard gear, you see the console and all that. But what you don't see is all the huge amounts of wiring, because a lot of that wiring is in the walls, is under the floor, and so forth. The star ground system, and all of that you don't see. A lot of times you don't. Well, another thing they're gonna talk about is how studios have they run dedicated power sources for all the gear to eliminate ground. For example, in a house, if you plug a piece of gear in your wall outlet, in your house, That's on the same ground as your refrigerator. It's on the same ground as your microwave and your stove and your washer and dryer. It's the same ground because when they build these houses, they're not thinking, oh, the occupants, occupants that's going to move in here is going to build a studio. They don't build houses like that. They just build a house with, two, three, four bedrooms, a bathroom, kitchen, living room, maybe a garage. So yeah, that's things that they never talk about. And for a long time, I never even thought about that, about the whole star ground system until it was brought to light by a good friend of mine. He's like, he started talking about the ground. I'm like, I never thought about that because every studio I've been in, you don't see the ground because all that stuff is tucked and buried. It's well, you know. Oh, Agov said cable management is a job. Yeah, it is. That's I wish I could have better cable management here, but I'm afraid. I mean, I can make my cabling here super, super nice. It would take probably a few months to do it right with all the gear. But I can do that. But then, for me to really make it nice is now I gotta, now I gotta put stuff in because the stuff is against the wall. A lot of times in these recording studios, wherever your rack gear and your console is going to be set, they're going to manage the wiring to minimize all this excess wire. They're going to route so that gear is in that location and location only. It never moves. So in my case, this is a bonus room. So I'm like, I got cables. It's the cables behind this console and those outboard gear is ridiculous. It's so much cable back there. And whenever I have a cable that's failing, that could be a nightmare because I turn on a piece of gear and only like left channels working. I'm like, now I got to troubleshoot it, and it sucks. I know what I need to do is I need to color coordinate my cables. That's what I need to do by getting red, green, blue, white, different colors of tape and at least wrap the cable. That way I know this cable on one end, let's say my compressor at the top, I might make it white. And then at the patch bay, also make it white. So that way I know that cable goes to that. Even though I see it on the patch bay, they're in numbered order. They're in row numbered order. But, that way if I have a problem, I can say, okay, this green cable is going to that compressor because it failed. So that's what I need to do. So that's what I need to do. That's going to take probably a couple of months to do that right. But I need to do that. So cable management, exactly. That's right. Also, that's right. You're exactly right because running signal wire parallel with power wires like can create hums and interference, especially if they're unbalanced cables. You won't get it as bad with balanced cables like TRS or XLR, but you will get it with TS cables for sure. So that can be an issue. That's another thing that a lot of times in the back of the rack, your power supplies, what they like to do is take all the power wires and, like say for example, and clamp them to the left of the back of the rack, and all the signal wires coming to the back of the like to the left or to the right to separate them as they're plugged into the back of the that's another thing that they do. Same thing with your ground, and then they'll have the grounds, all the grounds, because you will get 60 cycle hums, because that's what we're on, 60 cycles of AC current power. So yeah, I was talking about earlier, about getting EQ and compression right. So I use a cheat guide because it's just hard for me to remember to set like drums at 5-to-1, fast attack, medium release, and all that, and in my threshold or whatever. What's the best, so forth. And on top of that, not only remembering that, remembering, for example, should I use 4-to-1 on vocals? Should I use 8 to 1? Whatever the case. And a lot of times you have to look at your peaks. You record something. And then a lot of times it's like, well, how do if I'm going to take a preamp and I'm going to chain it through a compressor, how do I set the compressor so that the vocals still sound good, but they don't sound overly squashed and overly compressed? That's another technique, right? And on top of that, if I'm going to, a lot of times I try not to EQ on the way in. I try to avoid it as much as possible, because once you record it and burn it in, you can't get it out. You can't undo it. Only thing you can do after that is try to use EQ to fix. But if you burn EQ in your recording, it's hard to get it out. You can't, because it's, and that's the difference between making your vocals sound muffled, muddy, too thin, too brittle, too bright, and so forth. This is the reason why when it comes to recording vocals, you need to really know your microphones. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this for everyone out there. If you got just one microphone, you're doing yourself an injustice. You need to have multiple microphones, because microphones are not a one size fits all for anything. And that goes for vocals, that records for even guitar. Like, for example, someone has a guitar cabinet and they have a Marshall cabinet is going to sound different than a Fender cabinet. And a lot of times the difference might not be so much of, I'm just going to EQ to make the microphone sound good on this, no matter which microphone, with the same microphone. That's why I do not believe in using modeling microphone systems. Like Slate has one, and there's a few other ones that has modeling. Because believe it or not, it doesn't matter if you're using the modeling software. The issue is the capsule, the microphone. And I'll use this is a ribbon microphone, but let's say this is that Slate. This is a ribbon. This is the Marshall R8 R80 ribbon. But let's say this was that modeling microphone. It doesn't matter what software to make this sound like an AKG C414 or a Newman U87 or whatever. It's the same capsule. The capsule is what's capturing the source. So you have to change the microphone. And this is the reason why, for example, legendary recording / mixing engineers like Al Schmidt was so good, because he knew, for example, if he's going to record a set of trombones, he knew exactly what microphone is going to make them trombones shine. That's why he never really used EQ. He's like, well, no, that microphone's going to be too bright for those. I'm not going to use a 67 on trombones. I'm going to use an M49 on trombones as an example. That's why his trombones would have that detail of trombones in the recordings when you listen to stuff that he did. Because, for example, when Al Schmidt was recording big bands, trombones, trumpets, and whatever, first of all, half the orchestra already sounds good anyway, because they're using high quality instruments. They're not using a $200 Conn trumpet. They're using a 12, these are professional trumpet players. They're using high-end trumpets like, Bach Stratospheres, $3,000 horn. They're using, Signalhauser, high-end $3,000 saxophones with, those that have high quality mouthpieces with high quality reeds. That's half the battle. And then the way it is placed in the room, that's another half the battle. Everything else is just microphones and preamp choices. One of his biggest preamp choices was not only just the Neve 1073, but he also used Neve 1081s. The difference between a Neve 1083 and a Neve 1081 was that a Neve has a 3-band fixed EQ, and a 1081 has 4 bands on it. So, but other than that, it's the same thing with, whether it's a Neve console or an API, because everyone talks about the Neve or the API EQs, API 550s, API 550As versus 550Bs, which is a 4-band, versus 550A, which is a 3-band. Same situation. They got fixed EQs points on those APIs, and you're boosting increments of 2, 4, 6 dBs or whatever. But that was what Al Schmidt did. And a lot of big engineers do that. They choose what microphone. So if you're in your studio, I would say um, invest in a few different microphones because you might be recording a male vocalist. They may not sound good. Let's say you bought a Warm Audio U87. It may sound good on a good female vocal, or it could be a rapper. Not every rapper, it's the same thing vocally. Not every rapper has a high, low pitched voice. Some rappers have mid, some vocals are really high pitched. So U87 may not sound good on that one rapper. You might have to use something like a 47 or whatever on a different rapper. Same thing with vocals. You have a male vocalist might not sound good on a 47, whatever. You might have to use a 251 to make that male, because men, we have lower tone voices, so we tend to not have as bright high end like females do. So a 251 might sound better on a male, and the females tend to be a little bit higher pitch, especially a soprano female. She might have a little bit higher tone, so you might want to tone it down with a 67 or whatever. So there's something to think about if you're buying for your studio. Even if you just have a home studio set up, I would recommend investing in different microphones, so that way a lot of times you could just switch the microphone, use the same preamp, because sometimes preamps, not all the preamps, but a combination of the right preamp with the right microphone is going to make the difference between how your vocals are going to sound. It took me a long time to understand that, but that's another studio secret I want to throw out there. It's just knowing what gear to use. Engineers, and I would say some of the best engineers out there, like Joe Ciccarelli, as an example. He's the chief engineer at Sunset Sound, as an example. He just knows. He's got experience. Dave Pensado, y'all pray for him because he's in ill health. All these big engineers, Andrew Ships, Chrysler Alge, Sylvia Massey. Sylvia Massey is a microphone goddess. Manny American, he owns Larrabee Studios. Just the big names out there, they know. I was, just some of these big name engineers. They know what microphones. Like me, I don't have enough clients to come in to really deal with microphones on a daily basis, but I do got a client coming in. We're working on another track this after Christmas. So she's going to come in and we're going to record because I know her voice. I already know what microphone I'm going to use on her. And I already know what preamp I'm going to use. So, and for those that, if you're kind of wondering, she's going to really sound good. I have a 251 type microphone, and I'm going to run it through the 73. It's the Neve style 1073 preamp. She's going to sound amazing with that combination. And I'm going to pair that with the Lin 76 compressor because she can belt. So if y'all want to know my microphone chain for that, that's what I'm going to use. Like I said, I was talking studio gear. Speaking of gear, is anyone getting any gear that they want for Christmas? You can probably put it in the comments in the chat there. Are you getting gear? Is it a new interface? Is it a DAW upgrade, a DAW upgrade? Are you getting a new microphone? Are you getting a preamp or anything? Or are you getting gear for Christmas at all? Maybe some people aren't getting gear at all. Just kind of wondering. Or it always, when I do these live streams, we don't always have to talk about gear. We could talk about the industry, the music industry, which is interesting because right now, lately, everyone's talking about the AI invasion. And that can be that's gonna be a challenge because one thing I can say about AI, one thing I can say is when it comes to some of this AI is so pro level that is like, it makes you wonder because they already implementing AI. It's kind of like the people that are doing AI or they're really pushing AI to replace humans are not understanding the impact of the need for humans. Um, you already see it. You probably see it in TikTok videos. You probably see it in YouTube videos or whatever. A lot of times you see like some of the animals and some of these videos those aren't real people or real animals. Those are AI. You know, because some of these AIs really, really unrealistic. But that's another thing that's going on in the music industry because and that's going to be even another reason why they already justified why artists shouldn't get paid. And I'm like this. The reason why I still believe artists and everyone else should still get paid because as we do this music, we're putting in so much time. We're buying so much gear and putting in so much time to make this craft sound good for people to enjoy. Um, that's worth your time. You know, it's kind of like why, if I want to invest in some really, it's not that I want to have $25,000 ATC monitors, but there's a reason why ATC monitors are $25,000 as an example. Um, the better you can hear in your monitoring, the better it makes it for you make decisions for your audience to listen to. Because the audience has to enjoy what you're doing. This is all investment. You invest in a really high-end interface or whatever the case, plugins, your DAW, and you really get good at it. You spend a lot of time. And there's a lot of people that comes on these chat, like my live stream. People come on here. Some people have questions. Some people, give advice. But it's spending time to make this good so the millions of people out there that want to listen to your music can enjoy it. This is and I'm gonna I see Agar wrote a statement right quick. I'm gonna read it in a second. What I used to love about back in the day in the 90s and all that was when they had actual physical music stores. And the thing is how, that's how you would go to find out like when Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston or Michael Jackson, all these big name Prince or whatever, Luther Vandross, all these big name artists, a lot of them have passed away. Release, you go there and you can enjoy release and that was part of the experience, the music experience. You would actually contribute because the artist didn't get a whole lot of it. They got a little bit of it, but at least you bought the product, you bought the CD. That way, if the internet go down, I still have a real physical product. I can just throw in a CD player or the cassette player and enjoy it. Sit back, play through the stereo, just enjoy music. But all the people that it took, for them to go into all those big studios, the engineers spending the time to record, the investment in the gear to bring this high-end quality product that we're so used to listening to, it's worth paying for. That's like, like it's no different than, you going and get a really good meal. Well, what you're paying for is not only the meal, but you're paying for the chef that took the time to prepare the meal to make it good for you to enjoy. That's why it costs. I don't think music should be downgraded like that. I really don't. So, and see, Agar says, seems like AI lacks subtlety and plays too much. But for the competition, you can cut about half of what it plays and as a placeholder until you find the right musician to fill this. Yeah, it's kind of like, don't get me wrong. I've listened to some AI where I listened to this one AI where they took a rap song and they turned it into a 1950s classic. And it was an amazing sounding track for it to be AI. But it's just like, even though I know it's AI and it sounded really good, would have preferred if a real human had done that. That's just me. But that seems to be the hot topic right now is AI. But you're right as far as the subtlety and all that, because the details to what made music really good is all the little intricate details, the way the drummer's playing the drums or the way the guitar player is playing the licks, the humanality of it. Even if the music has some imperfection, that's a human instinct, vocally, and everything else, to have a little bit of those imperfections to make it sound human. That's what gives it its character. Um, I'm not expecting Mariah Carey to be perfectly pitched every time she sings all those lines, because that it sounds artificial. You can hear artificial. It doesn't sound when anything sounds artificial, then it lacks genuality to me. When it sounds artificial, it doesn't sound genuine when it's artificial. Um, so well, that's what I'm looking for in the character of a singer or a musician or whatever, is genuality. It's like the emotion. It's kind of like uh whenever emotion, a human emotion, well, computer don't have emotion, they don't have feelings, so it's just emulation. So they're gonna lack a little bit of that, to make you feel it. Um, so that's why I prefer real people. Um, so oh oh yeah, it says the problem is that it's getting better every year. And I wouldn't say, to me, it's kind of like it's getting to the point now. Like if you watch AI, the problem with AI versus watching a real human is AI right now is making humans look, their skin is too flawless. And you and I, there ain't a person out here that doesn't have some blemishes in their skin, you know. But AI doesn't know that. So like for example, you and I know every now and then we'll get a little bump or scratch, or whatever, the little bit of spots and shading and all this. That's just human, because skin is an organ, right? Well, in AI, it's too perfect. Um, so um, I don't know. It just doesn't seem genuine to me. But that's just me. So, but another thing, with the music industry, because I know that I was watching a video of a lot of people talking about how the music industry is broke and musicians are broke. Well, let me tell you, I made a video before about musicians being broke. Musicians, for the most part, when they're signed to record labels, have always been broke. Uh, but the business is not just the business is broken down in a lot of ways. Musicians actually make money or made money, and that was a musician when they realized, or when they signed a contract, that they're going to make their money other ways. Don't count on making your money on just record sales, because they record labels have always fixed it where the recording artist only gets a tiny percent of the cut that way. But where artists were making their money was not even as much as money they're making the touring as they were making on the merchandise. But artists also made their money on guest appearances, like TV shows and radio appearances and all that. So you can make your money that way. And that's as long as they were touring and all that, they're making these TV and guest appearances and all that. That's where the artist was making their money, selling their merchandise, their hats, their t-shirts, their posters. Um, but record labels, when they start getting greedy, when they start changing from and start going to 360 deals and everything else, including we're going to take majority of this, because Mozart ain't making no money off of streaming. And you try to get a million streams to only get $100, which is crazy to me. But the ones that still make actual, money from people listening audience is still radio, because radio still pay for licenses to play, and the licenses pay the publishing companies, songwriters, because the license, you have a license to play people's music on, so let's to terrestrial radio, which is your WTVA or 89.5, the jams or whatever. Um, so and what would happen is when they did play it, Like I got a thing right here from our group. They used to do these broadcasting reports. I got it in the back here. They used to get these little reports like that. Reporting. They would report all the radio station, the rotations and all that. Um, but and then your performance right organizations would be aware of stuff being played, and then that way you can get your royalties. But also stuff, physical sales of stuff like CDs and all that. Those are mechanical royalties. So artists, and pop producers and songwriters now make money. Um, Plus, a lot of times if a song is really popular, like they like to use classic songs in like movies. So you get a sync license, allow it to be played in the movie, and you get royalties from that as well. So um, you just gotta, you know. So, like I said before, a lot of people start tuning in. Um, I'm gonna do another plug in here right quick. And I believe Matthew Hatch said he listened to it, but for those that know, for that don't know, oh, I didn't see welcome JJ Johnny. I apologize if I didn't recognize you were there. For those that like I said, that the track that we did is finally released. You can actually go on YouTube Music or YouTube. You can actually go on Spotify or Pandora, or whatever you listen to, and all you gotta do is search for Wanda J. Wanda, common spelling, the letter J, and have yourself a merry little Christmas. And you'll be able to listen to the track. Just want to throw that out there. There's a few songs that I released. I listened to a couple. I was like, I kind of wish I mixed them a little different, but it is what it is. They're out there. But you can listen to it for those that and like I said, if I remember when I'm done with this live stream, to throw a link in there and you can go back and listen to it. I see quite a few people that's usually going to hear it and not on here tonight. Normally we would see like I don't know, I don't know. I can't remember everyone. But like I said, I hope everyone's getting what they want for Christmas coming up. Whatever year. I hope you're getting what you're getting and you're excited about it. Like me, with gear, I'm always excited about gear. And hope you're getting what you want. So let me see what else. So other than that, I'll be on here for a few more minutes. And then I'm answer this phone call right quick. So I'm gonna send her a message. So other than that, that's all I really wanted to talk about. So Sunday gear talk. Just if anyone's getting what they want for Christmas, or to wrap it up before I get off, is there a piece of gear that people think or would like to have, or is there a piece of gear you want? They always say sometimes that a lot of times when it comes to gear and all that, sometimes you gotta really get good at just already having the gear you have. But then there's pieces of gear it isn't complete unless you have it. Like you know. So I'm just kind of curious what is in there a piece of gear out there that people are wanting. You can kind of put it in the chats. For me, I'm pretty much done. Only thing I really want is I want to get some more cables. I want to get some more mic stands, and I need to get some racks, more racks for my gear. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I'm pretty much done. Um, I would say this build from the time I started in 2002, maybe 2001, maybe 2000, maybe 2001 to 2025, 24 years. Um, I've been working on building the setup that I want. Now I built the setup I want and it's outgrown the space I'm in. Oh, David said, we are never done. That is true because there's always things like maybe acoustic paneling, maybe some clouds, maybe some bass traps, um, more some high-end mic stands. Yes, that's true. Um, they say if you build $1 million studio, you've spent about 5 million, really, is what you spent. If it's $1 million studio, you really spent about 5 million. There's so many little details of stuff that you buy for your studio that's like, man, um, it's kind of like with synthesizers. I bought so many synthesizers, I done ran out of space. I just don't have the space for no more synthesizers. I really don't. Even though looking at getting the Montage M7, don't have the space because keyboards they take up space. Unlike a guitar that you can hang on the wall or put on a stand, they're usually guitars that they're not going to take up as much of space as a keyboard needs to be sitting on at least a stand or something. They can take up a lot of space. I would say my keyboard section in that corner is definitely taking up some space. So, Ega says Behringer's supposed to make a VCS3. What in the world is a VC3? Let me see. What is that? Let me Google that right quick. So I don't know what he said, was Behringer supposed to make you in generally a VC S3, or is it they're going to make their version of a Behringer VC and you were going to purchase it? Let's see, S3. I just typed it in. I'm assuming the VCs, the V is for vintage. I'm gonna have to make an assumption, but let me see what they're saying here. Okay. So I'm assuming that it's not out yet. And Behringer was talking about making another vintage classic synth. So I'm assuming VC stands for Behringer Vintage Classic Synth version 3. Because that's a lot of times that's how they normally name this stuff. Okay. Let's see. Matthew says I'm still planning on getting the LA2A clone and a Roswell Mini. Says okay, that's a good combination. If you can get the Stem Audio 2A clone, that's a really good one. But if it's a little pricey, you can't go wrong with the Lindale Audio. I have a Lind 2As in my rack. All you go says is an analog synth class. That's what I thought. Vintage set and synth class. I'm thinking VC3. So, and this says they were going to make their version. They declared it cost prohibitive. The original was the EMS. Okay, so EMS, yeah, because Behringer's definitely known. So let me see what the EMS VC3 looks like. And I'm assuming EMS is for okay. Oh, I was wrong. VCS doesn't stand for Vintage classic. It stands for voltage control synthesizer. Okay. Oh, that's what that is. Oh, I see what it is. Okay. All right, I see what it is. Okay, got it. Oh, okay. So I'm not into classic analog boards like that. A lot of people are. They're into analog consoles like that. I'm not, like the Korg MS-20 um and just the classic Moog and Oberheim, and I've never been to like the Oberheim, was the Oberheim OBXA. I just never been into the classic. Um so he said, man, oh yeah, yeah, the KT. Yeah, I have both the Lindale and the KT. I have those. I have, they're great. I have absolutely no problem with those. So I have those. Um, so okay. Like I said, I mean, when it comes to synthesizers, I have more, a little bit newer, modern digital synths, like the Roland Phantom, the my Chord Cronus, and um, my Motif, and my Chord Triton Studio, and the Roland X, those type of boards. That's what I play. Um, welcome. I mixed up, so welcome. Like I said, I'll be on here for probably another 20 minutes, and then because it's coming up, Christmas is coming up. It's just the 21st, and Christmas is coming up, and I'm hoping everyone's getting what they want for Christmas. You know, um, so yeah. Other than that, yeah, something like I said, a lot of people like those classic analog synths. They like experimenting using the parameters and the LFOs and the envelopes and all that to make different sounds and changing the knobs and plugging the cables. That's just not me. Um, that's not my thing. I like a little bit. I like modern boards where I can just, the sound's already there on boards, and I can just so but a lot of people like classic boards like that. You just know, it's kind of like the same thing with guitars and all that. Some people love, they rather have a vintage Les Paul, a 1965 Les Paul or whatever, or Gibson 1971 or whatever, or a Fender P Bass 1968, whatever. People love that sound of instruments compared to a modern, uh, with some more other, like a Spectre bass or something like that. Some people now, I don't really want a new Spectre or whatever. I'll give me a classic Fender Jazz bass or whatever. Um, so same thing with synth. Some people they like playing, but to me, I'm more of a modern board user, you know. So yeah. Oh, Max says I like the Juno, like the Roland Juno. Um, I guess for me, those classic boards, a reason why, because you can't, they don't have 16 track sequencers or nothing like that in them or whatever. Even though, I don't know, the sounds, when I play, a lot of those sounds, those sawtooth sounds, or, those sine wave sounds or whatever. Even though you could take a sine wave sound and do all that stuff with the knobs, I'm like, if I'm looking for a brass to sound like horns in a modern board, I could just go to Brad, like synth brass, and it's already ready to go. I can, um, but there are people that like to experiment and come up with some different sounds as well. Um, I usually do that with the VST instruments on those classic board sounds. I'll just play with I'll just grab the controller and I'll just manipulate those sounds in VST instruments, but not, like, to me, I just don't have any room for all those boards. I'm already out of room now. So Oh yeah, yeah, there is. Yeah, there's always when you talk with like Sound Toys, UAD, and Isotope. There are, those companies are always developing VST instruments and so forth. Um, so like me, I have a Slate collection for plugins. I just upgrade a lot more of my Slate because I have that bundle deal. But um, you said they almost forced to use modulators, like you said, the newer modern synths are ready, they're great patches and performance. Yeah, it's just me. They're already ready to go sounds. So that's just me. But it's all about what you like to do and what you want to do. So some people they like to come up with what they can come up with the classic boards. That's just not. I just rather be able to turn on my Triton Studio and I want strings. I just go to my bank of strings and just start playing those string sounds like legacy strings. They're already ready to go. That's just me. Um, and of course I still have the knobs. I can still manipulate a little bit. Um, or the same thing with my Macronis or whatever. It's the same thing. Those sounds already sound pretty darn legit, like guitars or acoustic guitar sounds or horn sounds, like in my Cronus. They already sound pretty legit. So everyone has their flavors. That's why I love about this whole music and recording thing. There's a million things you can do to make good stuff, good music. There's just so many options. The options are endless, um, with the amount of stuff that you can do. Um, you know, I would say we're living in a time now where the technology and the advancement of what we can do does not require us to spend millions of dollars to do it now. Old school system, you know, you had to go into a large console, you had to go to commercial studio with a large console, all the outboard gear and a tape machine, and you had to have musicians. If you listen to classic music, there was always a band. There was always a drummer, bass guitar, a couple of guitar players, percussionists, vocals, horn sections. But it was always a band making the music. But now synthesizer with advancement is kind of like I can choose so many patch options just on one synthesizer alone and make a full arrangement of songs. And then the VST instruments now, and sometimes this can get under some musicians' skin. Like it's kind of like I can create drum sounds like, well, I don't need to mic up and hire a drummer. I can use like acoustic drum uh, program, and they sound like real drums. All I can do is a little manipulation, maybe put a Sunset Sound live room sound and to make it sound like I'm recording in their live room, and done. Um, Same thing with ample bass or whatever. You got all these choices of different bass guitar sounds. Like even though I play an actual real bass, but yeah, whatever. The only thing that's hard to manipulate is guitars. Um, Even though keyboards and VST sound like guitars, but the way a real guitar player plays a guitar is as what makes a guitar sound like a guitar. If that made sense. Same thing with like saxophones, trumpets, and analog instruments like that. Yeah, there's your keyboard you can play trumpet sounds, guitar sounds, bass guitar, whatever. But sometimes it takes a real musician playing that real instrument to really make it sound authentic. Because sometimes keyboards, even today, some sounds just don't sound authentic. Um, Drums, when it comes to sounds of drums is the one thing that we've gotten down that we play that you don't need real drummers to do anymore. That's the one thing that we've gotten down. Whether you playing a VST drums kit and it's acoustic drum kit, whether you're playing, an actual drum kit, but even bass guitars now. Um, that naturally keyboards, naturally because keyboards, are keyboards. The only thing that's hard is saxophones, trumpets, instruments like that. But there are some instruments that sound so authentic from a keyboard, like flutes and even strings now. You can make just your VST instruments with the strings sound like a full range orchestra now. It can fool the audience, So, um, but they're getting better. They're making these stuff, with these these boards, you know, the sounds in these boards are starting. They're getting better and better. That's why I'm really like, if I play like my Motif XF and then I play a classic Yamaha DX7, the DX7 don't have the, how can I describe it? It doesn't sound as good to me as a modern, like my Motif. So, but now let me see what else. Oh yeah, back to say complete. Yeah, complete is, it's like there's contact, there's complete. There's so many different VST keyboard package, VST plugin software. There's a lot of them. Um, yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, like, yep, yeah, you're right. There you go. That is right. When it comes to turning knobs and all that, yep. The stuff that you can do in software and plugins and the functionality is unparalleled right now. You know, Mike says I can fool drummer friends when I show them drums I've done a lot. Yeah, it's drums they gotten down. You know, now the only thing is there are things that real drummers do that is, you have to think like a drummer to make it do what like the way drummers, it's just all the combinations of just rolls and everything else that a real drummer does that's hard to emulate. But if you're really good, you can get really, really close. So, but there are things that drummers do on a real set of drums that sometimes that's just hard to beat. That's so um oh, he says, David said, that's what sold me on Logic over other DAWs, although I play keys, bass, guitar, and drum. Logic. There is so many, um, some DAWs are better at that than others. Some DAWs, like for example, if you are a Harrison mixed bus user, that is a DAW generally set up to generally set up to as a mixing console and like a tape machine, and it's not really intuitive, like when it comes to creating like that, like you can in Logic. I do that very well in Cakewalk. I also do that very well in Studio One. Um, some people do it really well in Reaper. Um, some people really do it well in Ableton Live. I think FL Studio is really good at like loop sample, like looping, and that's why I call it FL Studio. Um, then there's Reason, which is pretty much, I think Reason is probably a top dog for like EDM music. So welcome, G Riz. G Riz says, what kind of music do I love to produce? I am a old school R&B. I am a EDM. I'm a gospel player because I play organ and piano every week in church. I like, popular music, techno music, stuff like that. But and jazz, especially jazz. That's my genre of music. I got people here that are rock. Some people here are country. Some people are hip hop. So those are. But for me, I'm old school R&B, jazz, gospel, EDM, techno, stuff like that. That's what I produce really well. Um, let's see. Um, oh, yes, one thing said they have not charged for Logic Pro upgrade for like 50. It's like me, I have Logic Pro on my Mac here, but my Mac is old. I'm getting a new Mac with the new M chip, so I'm gonna be going Mac, uh, so I can really get into Logic more. But I am a hardcore Cakewalk Studio One. I use Harrison, Mixbus, and Reaper quite a bit. Those are, but I also use Reason. There's some people here, I've played around with Ableton Live. I played around with FL Studio. I really just not feeling FL Studio. FL Studio to me takes too much to try to learn how it runs. Um, I've never been a Pro Tools person at all, even though I have the Pro Tools Intro and Pro Tools First, which is the limited versions of Pro Tools, especially Pro Tools Intro. I just never could get into Pro Tools because I've never felt justified paying that kind of money for Pro Tools when I can get the same results out of Studio One and Cakewalk. Um, so, um, but I like Reason too. Reason is definitely fun. It's to me it's the ultimate in the box, electronic EDM type of style of music. Out of all of it is Reason, because of the instruments. Um, that everything that you can do. Plus, Reason, you can use Reason as its own. You can use it as a plug-in, and other DAWs can use their instruments. Also, Reason will see other DAW or see other third-party plugins. So, but there are a lot of people that like Logic. I got some stuff I was messing around with Logic. Like I said, it's the old Logic because my Mac is old. So, other than that, like I said, I'm hoping everyone's going to get what they want for the gear that they want, even if it's just plugins of software. If you're looking to get a new plugin, whatever, have some fun with it. It's a new VST instrument, or maybe a new VST synth. Whatever the case, what is out there. So, yeah. Oh, it said get the new Mac Mini M4 base around $599. Upgrade the 512 gigabyte, then add a because that's what I like to do now is just because this Mac, what I love about these I wish computers. That's one thing about Mac, especially these cheese grater style of Macs. When it comes to these Macs, these have to be some of the most well-built chassis I've ever seen. These chassis are definitely well better. To me, I would not have a problem shipping my Mac. I would be scared to ship a PC tower. I would not be scared. These Macs are well built. So, but yeah, I'm definitely looking at getting a Mac Mini or maybe a Mac Pro or just whatever it is with the least, the M4. I've already seen it. There's one guy, he had a track up and he had like 125 plugins, and he was only eating up 25% of his processing. I was blown away with that many plugins, and it wasn't making a dent in the process. I said, that's what's up. So I'll see. There was a time when you needed Pro Tools to do higher sampling rate, but now everyone does 192K sampling. Yeah, like me, I still don't do 192. I don't do anything higher than 48. But some people, but all my interfaces can do 192 sampling rate. So I just don't do that much because that is processor that takes up a lot of your hard drive space. With that amount of sampling. So Jirius has said, anything you have made or helped create recently that made you say, this is what I love about music. I'm always like I said, I just got finished doing a Christmas project. We just uploaded. It's coming out as we speak, and it's on Spotify and Pandora. But I got some stuff on SoundCloud and Reverb Nation, and plus the very first album that I did with some friends of mine, some producer friend of mine, was back in the 90s. And there are people that, believe it or not, I was still shocked. There are people that still play this on their YouTube channel. And this album we did back in 94. I did this music back in 1994 when I was with this record label. And I was on eBay, and you can still buy the CD. That blows me away. I was also on Google and Discog, and you can still buy the CD. And for if you're wondering what I'm talking about, is it's a CD called A Different Taste. And one of the songs that was playing a lot on the radio was Make a Move. So this is what the album I'll show y'all. This is what the album cover looks like. So A Different Taste. We did this album back in 1994. It got officially released in 95, but we did it 94, 95. And people still can buy it. Like, you can buy the CD on eBay right now. So, and we're talking 30 years. So that's what I love that's what makes me say this is what I love about doing music. It's it's just, even though I was in the Army and I'm a mechanic and I do all this I do photography and all this other stuff. This is a hard, I'll do this till I die. So that's just me. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. I mixed up. Great music just doesn't age. Like, I can still listen to classic Stevie Wonder. I was listening to his the song as the world seemed to be revolving, and the song, or was it the flowers seem to bloom in early May? That song. I was just listening to that a few minutes ago or a little bit before I started the live stream. It's just, I never get tired of those classic Stevie Wonder songs, or those classic Luther Vandross songs, or all those classic R&B songs. I just never get tired of them. Even though the 90s stuff, listen to Intro and SWV, Earth, Wind and Fire. I just never get tired of it. Even if it's like, I'll go back to even when I was listening to, even if I listen to some rock, like my two favorite rock songs is, when it comes to rock music, well, I have a few, really. I have more than that. But my two all-time favorite is Back in Black by AC/DC. And I like Photograph by Def Leppard. But I like a lot of rock songs, definitely Van Halen. But I also like some country songs. Like, I really like that song White Liar by Miranda Lambert. Hey, White Liar. I love that song. So I have a lot of genres of music that I like. A lot, if it's good, I don't care what genre it is. If it's good, it's good. Even going back to hip hop, I was sitting there playing, that song by Black Sheep. Here's the Black Sheep. Where's the black? I was listening to that. I'll listen to, matter of fact, Me Against the World by Tupac. That's one of my favorite songs by Tupac, Me Against the World. I was listening to even Biggie Smalls. I love it when you call me Big Papa. I just, everything. I don't like modern rap. I like 90s rap, 80s and 90s rap, hip hop. Eric B. Rakim. When Queen Latifah was hot. Heavy D when he was alive, back when he Heavy D in the Boys. Yep. Like Jilla Pick says, your music legacy lives on. Even, Juris said Prince. Believe it or not, I'm not a big Prince. I admire Prince as a musician because he's a genius as a musician, but I'm not a big Prince fan. Like, I like some of the songs he's done. To me, for example, I like Pop Life as an example, or Let's Go Crazy. Um, I like Kiss, um, and a few other tracks that he's done, but I'm not a hardcore Prince. Like they're like Purple Rain. Purple Rain to me, it's only got three chords in the entire song, and it's just boring to me. That's just me. So people that are Prince lovers, don't get mad at me. I'm just not big time Prince. I like music that does a little bit more interesting stuff in it, like "Sing When You're Loved" by Stevie Wonder. I like chord changes because I'm a musician. I'm a keyboard player, so I like a lot of interesting chord changes, especially unique chord changes. I don't want to just you to go from a minor, from a major to a minor to back to a major, and that's it. And that's it. There's way more chord changes to make your stuff sound more interesting than just three chords. Um, unless it's done right. Because there's one song that I absolutely love, and it's only got two chords in it. It's only got two chords in it, but it's just the way it's arranged. And that's that song by the Spinners called I'll Be Around. It's only it goes from E minor to F major. Dun, 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 dun. So that's one of my favorite songs by the Spinners, but that's just me. The up tempo ones, yeah, like for example, I like Party Like It's 1999. I was dreaming when I wrote this, so play it. I don't remember all the words. That one, yeah, I like that one. 1999. Let's Go Crazy. Um, Even when, yeah, some of when Prince does some of the more up tempo stuff, yeah. I'm not really big on the slow stuff. Oh yeah, Matt just says, yeah, gotta do it for like what else are we gonna do? That's right. To me, that's the reason why they say music calms the savage beast. I think music is universal. Out of everything, we all because music is pleasant for us to listen to, no matter what, whatever you love, um, whatever you're going through, whatever music has a way, especially whoever, you know, you know, yeah, yeah, like Jerry said, I can feel the passion. Music does stuff. I don't care what genre of music, whatever it is, music tends to, that's the reason why we all love music. I always say, yeah, you don't need to give me. I can say there's so many. I mean, and it's kind of like some people they would assume, like for example, um, um, I'm liable to listen to the Carpenters. Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? Just like me. I love that. I can listen. I never get tired of that. But I'm liable to jump from that to Back in Black. I hit the sack. So I'm liable to jump from that to Smoking in the Boys' Room. That one to Luther Vandross. Loneliness. So, or Freddie Jackson, you are my lady. So, I'm actually saying I listen to Bombella and I don't know who that is. This in the Gypsy Kings. I don't know every artist, so forgive me if you start naming names and I don't know who that is. I don't listen to everybody, so I just don't know who that is. But I'm sure that if you like them, they're probably like anything that you like is definitely good. If you like it, they're definitely good. Then that's what matters. That's all that matters. So once again, so that's gonna wrap it up for this segment. I think I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and once again, y'all want to see me until after Christmas. Oh, Bombella is the song, and Gypsy Kings. Okay, I got you. Okay. Oh, say Close to You, great cover by Paul Weller. Okay, I haven't heard that. I just always listen to the original one by the Carpenters. Close to You. I was also the sailing away. I just you were Christopher Cross. I was listening to, I mean, you name it. It's probably, I don't know, thousands of songs out there. hundreds of thousands of songs. It's a lot. So I want to wish everyone a happy Christmas. I won't see y'all till after Christmas. So I want to wish everyone a happy Christmas. And once again, I hope y'all get what you want for Christmas, and make some good music. Other than that, we'll see you next time. And wish everyone a Merry Christmas. Y'all have a good one.